Hi, I'm Ian Brown, Managing Director of Excel Point, and you're listening to On Point, a podcast brought to you by ourselves, Excel Point. For those of you who haven't heard of us, we're a global leader in the development of no-code technology. We help businesses all around the world to update outdated processes, overcome challenges, automate workflows, and streamline their business processes. We do this by implementing innovative and automated, highly flexible, adaptable, no-code software. Typically, we do this 10 times faster than bespoke development. Today, we're joined by Alan Smith, an experienced director and board member with a demonstrated history of working in local government and affordable housing sectors, skilled in leadership and management, strategic planning, finance, change management, a strong finance professional and a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy. Alan is currently an executive director and a board member of Believe Housing, an affordable housing provider with 18,000 homes operating predominantly across County Durham. Alan, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Ian. Pleasure.
And I should imagine in the current economic climate, pandemic, wherever it is, start, finish, end, that's presented some challenges to operating 18,000 homes, because when I say that number, I suddenly then think to operate 18,000 homes, as FD, you're not just looking at finance, you're looking at people, you're looking at service providers, you're looking at infrastructure. That must be a massive challenge in the current climate.
Yeah, definitely. I think interesting, tricky, challenging in equal measure. You're dead right, Ian. It's a people business ultimately. 18,000 homes brings over 20,000 customers. We have over 500 staff, and keeping staff and customers safe has been paramount now, thinking from day one. So it has been a constant and evolving challenge as we've gone through that process.
Yeah. And have your customers changed much? Have the expectations of your customers changed before, during and after the pandemic, as it were, as the circumstances have changed?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, we don't know yet how it will change as we emerge out of this and what might come next in terms of the pandemic. But we were unable, like lots of organisations, to deliver a full range of services. Because of the way that the initial wave of the pandemic sort of challenged society generally. A lot of our customers were shielding, vulnerable customers were shielding. A number of customers were reluctant to allow us into their homes. And equally from our perspective, given I think the first wave of COVID restrictions where we were limited as to how many people you could actually have moving around doing work, we had to sort of just basically do essential and emergency work for customers. So making sure that their gas boilers were safe and compliant. If they had a leak or a flood, that could go in and do the emergency repair with all the associated safety measures that we needed to put in place to do that as well. And then gradually sort of test over time what customer sentiment started to look like. How did they feel about us going back into their homes? And initially they were more comfortable if we were doing external work, obviously, and then gradually being able to get back into their homes as we started to do some catch-up work on things like repairs that we couldn't do at the height of the pandemic. But it has been a changing picture because of the variability of different kind of stages of lockdown. I think it was about 12 months ago we looked as though we were coming out of that first wave, and then we were back into tier 3, then we were back into national lockdown again from Christmas week, I think it was, just before New Year. So it has been sort of up and down. What we've tried to do is keep our customers informed with letters, lots of newsletters. We've tried to get more information from customers on things like email addresses, so we could send messages out digitally rather than sort of the physical type approach that we've done previously. And particularly for our more vulnerable customers, older people or people that live on their own, we were ringing them, dialing them out and just asking how they were. And I think we did about 18,000 what we called welfare and support calls that either meant that we could give customers more direct support if they needed to get their medication or shopping, or we could signpost them to a community group or a charity in the area
Yeah.
that was actually doing that on their behalf as well. So there was an element of us needing to move sort of fairly quickly and sort of remobilise wherever we could.
Yeah, I think in our sector, I've bleated on for years about agility, flexibility, opportunity, etc. But I think the pandemic has focused minds, so that ability to be agile, to flex, the I wouldn't say a capability, but the challenge that's afforded to a business as to whether they can take the circumstances as an opportunity to step up and do better, or whether they're going to some degree cave in under the pressure because they're trying to operate a model that's worked for the last 20 or 30 years and the world has now changed ever so suddenly. I would imagine that your workforce have had to be much more agile, much more flexible.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're right. I think crisis brings opportunity, and we were already on a transformation program that we could see things were changing and needed to change. So we'd already started to sort of introduce different ways of working, different ways of kind of giving customers a better experience from our perspective. So our repairs team, for example, were going straight to customers' homes rather than coming to a depot and then sort of moving on. Our neighbourhoods teams were going straight out onto their patch to meet their customers, and we were considering how our office-based staff will be able to work in a more flexible and agile way, and that really served us well. That when we got the first lockdown in March last year, we were able to switch to sort of home work and flexible work, and the week before the final announcement came, so we were well prepared for that. Everybody had the mobile kit, so we weren't sort of chasing around PC World trying to grab laptops off shelves and things, and we were ready to go. Our board went virtual in the first week, so we felt well prepared for that element of it. Our financial year runs 1st of April to 31st of March, so again we'd literally just sort of finished our corporate project plan for the year. We just finished our financial plan for the year, so we had to get straight into how do we reevaluate this, how do we reprioritise this, and when we look back at that full financial year, we look back with pride because we achieved a lot of successes. There were a lot of things that we started, we were able to continue. We were able to bring some things forward, and we were able to put some things on ice just to reflect on the fact that we weren't in a normal world, a normal operating environment, but it didn't sort of stop us, and it's sort of given us that sort of drive to keep going with the changes and what might happen afterwards.
I would think it's helped to either set or reinforce a culture of teamwork and customer-centric and flexible, etc. So as a large organisation of 500 people, have you seen cultural differences during the last 2 years?
Hugely, again...
And positive or negative? Or?
Positive. We'd already started on that, so it gave us quite a nice baseline, and we'd done a culture audit in end of 2019, I think it was, the first one that we'd done. So we repeated that again on the anniversary in 2020, and our culture score had moved forward massively from 1 year to the next. And given the challenging nature and people being flung into their dining rooms and kitchen tables with homeschooling and lots of kind of worries, particularly if they were a family where there were key workers going out into what was a really difficult situation, the positivity we were getting back from our staff was fantastic. We did a best companies survey in last year as well. We were awarded a 2-star company status, one of the top housing providers in the UK, one of the top businesses in the Northeast. And for our first sort of attempt at that, given the timing of it, we were really, really pleased with the outcome of that. And our customer satisfaction score went up last year on our measure, which we went from 86 to 86.8 over the period of the pandemic as well. So that gave us some encouragement that what we were doing, both from a staff and a customer perspective, was kind of hitting the mark. It was doing the right thing, yeah.
And you've just made me recall, in my very early years, I was a Boy Scout, and motto, be prepared. it sounds like Believe were well prepared, and when this chaotic situation unfolded of the pandemic, that you could react to that and respond to that because you were starting from a strong base where it sounds like most of what you had was already prepared, and you were building on it rather than trying to invent from scratch.
Yeah, we didn't have pandemic on our risk register. We do now.
Yep.
But I think, again, it was that mindset, that ability to sort of, well, what do we have? How can we utilise it? How can we flex it? And I guess, like a lot of businesses, there was a bit of playing it by ear, certainly in those first few weeks, of what does this mean? And trying to sort of pick your way through the information that you were getting back from government, however limited, where you needed to read between the lines, and picking up from national news headlines in the same way that everybody else was, and how did they then apply to the business as well. Changing our governance arrangements to get decisions through quickly where we needed to get decisions through quickly, looking at things like how many hours staff were working, the challenges that they had, and what that meant, and where we needed to flex and accept the fact that not everybody could do the traditional, the standard, the full hours, because of the unknowns that were being placed on staff and families as well. So we were playing it by ear a little bit, and then gradually I think you sort of settle into a different way.
Yeah. So as a social housing provider, you must deal with scenarios where your customers are vulnerable, they may be more susceptible to economic impacts, and so on. So you're providing not only housing, which is clearly what the business is all about, but you're providing a support infrastructure and an environment within which people can grow happy, stable families and lives. And you talked a moment ago about engaging with your clients, your customers. Have you been more successful at engaging with them in a digital capacity, be it emails or mobile apps or push notifications or whatever that might be? And has that brought some challenges to Believe Housing as well? The fact that you are moving more to a digital world, and that brings great advantages and strengths and some challenges and problems.
Yeah, it does, and again, it's a journey that we'd started. We see it in our own lives that our expectations are driven by the best in class of what somebody else does, whether that be an Amazon or a Sky or something, and how you interact with those companies drives how you expect to interact with other companies as well. So we'd started to sort of think about how we could improve our customer journey by the introduction of digital tools. And I already talked about our working patterns, so we brought in technology, dynamic resource scheduling, so that allows our repairs operatives to go from job to job to job without sort of moving all over the place. The mobile technology that we put in place for our workforce, that allows them to go straight out to meet customers, armed with tablet technology that then links back into our back office systems, and we whole plethora of digital projects that were coming on stream, largely which a lot have continued. We also had a bit of a digital push with our customers as well, to sort of get email addresses for them to sign up to the app, so that we could interact in that way, so we could keep that contact going. And when we weren't able to do our full range of repair service for our trades operatives who weren't able to go out and do the job, they were ringing customers up or using, I think it was a software product called Sitecall. It's like a virtual reality type product, where they could talk customers through the very basic repairs that weren't necessarily dangerous for them to do. So they were doing some stuff directly as well. And then the welfare call, sort of dialing out to people and speaking to them, because we do have a range of customers who go from very digital savvy to have never ever sort of touched digital for lots of reasons, whether it be skills, age, financial. So we have to kind of make sure that we can't go all in straight away. So we've got to reflect on the demographic of our customer base as well. So we're trying to make sure that there were choices there for everybody, but maintaining contact and engagement with customers through digital means was something we tried to sort of improve on quite rapidly throughout the course of the last year.
Some of the big players in tech, so I don't mind mentioning Apple and Google and people like that, a year or two ago were pushing an agenda of everybody working from home, really flexible, etc. Now that's moved more to mixed working, sometime office-based, sometime home, and more of an emphasis being together again. I think businesses of all sizes, from the very small to the very, very large, are still trying to get to grips with what does this brave new world of working look like for employees. How do we keep them connected with their systems, connected with their information, still part of the corporate culture and values, able to deliver a good service, not feel isolated. But I believe have addressed some of those issues along the way.
Yes, I would say that we have, we were always at pains to say that the position that we found ourselves in was not the way that we wanted it to be. It was a forced situation. The technology worked brilliantly, and the work that our IT team did, it allowed us to sort of test how that worked. But I think we always felt that there was a role for the office as well. And we just moved into a new office, I think 24th of February last year, so literally 3 weeks beforehand. But we see that more as a collaborative space for people to come together, work on projects, do training, have team discussions. Whereas if you need just to do some work, then that can be done pretty much anywhere. It doesn't have to be homework, and it can be coffee shop work or whatever suits. So we're always looking for this blended solution. And we're also recognising that across the range of services that we provide, it's not a blueprint for every team. You know, the business needs of each team differ. There may be some teams where office working will always be the best solution for them. There may be others where team members are hardly ever in the office, or it's a kind of a very infrequent sort of catch-up. I think we've all recognised the benefit of human contact in that period. So I think what it's done is probably accelerated thinking a little bit in terms of how that could work, how people can be interact with their team members, what well-being looks like, because well-being looks very different in a remote and hybrid environment to what it did in a fully based office environment, and the importance of lots of conversations, great conversations, shared experiences, compassion, flexibility. It has to be part of how we do this, because we don't want isolation, we don't want people to be challenged by this environment. But I think people have recognised the benefits of that sort of flexible element of it, whether not having to do the commute and walking the dog instead, or that ability to sort of take the kids off and drop them off at school. It brings its advantages as well, and it's something we were looking to explore and promote wherever we could. And again, what we've drafted in the last sort of 6-8 months is our Work in the Believe Way framework, which is how we take the best of what we've seen with what we had before and really blend the two together going forward.
Sounds like you're getting a lot right. So you're very much a numbers man, if you don't mind me saying. And I'm interested in your view, UK-wide, but maybe the North East specifically, because we're both in County Durham. Are you County Durham born and bred? I'm County Durham born and bred as well. So when you look at financial constraints, whether it's on Believe or the wider business community, how do you see the next 12 months? How do you see the northeast of England? Do we have a vibrant, opportunistic challenge in front of us and grasp it? Or do you think we've got some really challenging times ahead and we're going to need all the support we can get and give people?
I think that's a really difficult one to answer, Ian. I'm not sure whether what we've seen so far is anywhere near the end of what we're likely to see. Things seem to be quite buoyant economically at the moment, but we're not quite sure what will happen as the whole sort of situation moves forward a bit. There have been one or two positive signs of new business growth in the northeast as well, which is encouraging. But equally, we're not at the end of the furlough scheme yet either, so we don't yet know what the sort of the tail end will be of the implications of that area as well. So I think again it's about having a range of scenarios available to you, what the impact on your business would be of those scenarios, almost your sort of, I don't know, your expected one, and what might happen that way and what might happen negative or positive, and just sort of being alert and maintain that element of flexibility and agility in your own business. We were very worried about cash flow at the start of the pandemic. Our business is underpinned by our customers paying their rents, and as people were being put onto furlough and losing jobs, changes in universal credit structure, we were very worried about our income. That held up quite strongly. So some of the things that we were expecting didn't happen. But that's not to say that isn't just something that's being masked by some of the support mechanisms that are in place to make sure that it happens. So we're not kind of being complacent yet. There could be some inflation pressures around the corner. We're seeing some supply chains that are a little bit sticky, where supplies aren't appearing, or when they are appearing, they're becoming very, very expensive. So there's a whole range of things that we need to consider as we approach the next 6, 12, 18 months.
So flexibility.
I think so.
The ability to adapt and change. Yeah, I would echo that. One of the challenges we've seen as a business, and I've talked to lots of businesses, and it's not just us, it seems to be common across the board, is recruitment. So we're recruiting, but finding good people who are prepared to move jobs at an unpredictable time and fit into a new role, etc. Uncertainty, maybe there's other factors playing a part as well, seems to mean that the recruitment marketplace is a difficult marketplace to exist in. Presumably you need to be, with a large organisation, recruiting almost all the time. Are you seeing any of that, or are you managing to adapt and solve some of those problems?
It's been a bit mixed, I think. We probably didn't do very much recruitment because there was no market to recruit in that environment. And then gradually as we got into sort of April, May, June time, things started to change a little bit, and we've recruited some brilliant people during the pandemic period. Some people that have maybe not even met anybody physically yet, or have only done it fleetingly as we've kind of dipped in and out of the office. And then other areas, there's just a distinct lack of kind of application or movement. I don't know whether it's down to timing or whether it's down to certain pockets of professions or jobs. I don't know, I haven't got the statistics, but it has been a bit mixed. And there are some areas where managers have probably just held off on recruiting because they're not quite sure, or they're re-evaluating what it is they need coming out of that. So we've not stopped recruiting. We've seen some good internal opportunities for people to sort of demonstrate during the pandemic or through the change process that we've adopted their kind of value to us as an organisation. I've seen lots of internal promotions on the back of that as well, but that then does create other sort of vacancies elsewhere in the organisation.
That's great. That's great news, and that's a good indication of an employer that's promoting from within. So we're a much smaller organisation, but we promote from within and grow talent locally. And I think in County Durham there's a lot of that takes place when you look at businesses. And I admire that, and I'm a big advocate of that. So it's great to hear that in Believe as well. Is there anything in particular you want to ask me, or it's not a one-way street? This is open conversation.
I guess the other thing I would just add on recruitment is as you move towards this more sort of flexible, mixed approach, you've got less boundaries around recruitment as well. And that's something that we've been looking to explore. We want to explore a little bit more. If you're not sort of tethered to an office 5 days a week, if you're not sort of restricted by the 9 to 5 kind of routine, then that opens up different job markets, and that's something we'll be looking to explore. In terms of your sort of output, is it in a more commercial organisation? How are you sort of seeing that sort of challenge back of people wanting to sort of buy into your service? I've seen people sort of being a bit more cautious about sort of buying in and expanding.
I think 18 months to 12 months ago, there was a lot of deferment of decisions. So I think people were trying to make sense of what's happening and deferring decisions. We had a number of customers who saw a good opportunity, who wanted to react quickly, and we won business on the back of that, and we were able to facilitate, to some degree, a pivot on business and a business model. So there was some good business, but then there was some decisions that were just deferred and kicked into the long grass. So I think challenging, I would say. More recently, as things are picking up, I think it's opened up all sorts of opportunities, and we always had an aspiration to expand internationally, go back a couple of years. COVID more or less dampened that, but we are back on that international expansion front, and we're finding customers in other parts of the world. And of course, being a digital business, we can do that. We can deliver the service anywhere. And as you just touched on recruitment, we're more and more looking for people who could work from us from anywhere. They don't have to be based within, let's say, 50 miles of our office. They could be anywhere in the UK, work from home, work part-time at the office, etc. So that flexibility is flowing through to how we build our future team as well. So it is interesting. We, like yourselves, we were probably doing some of that already. I think it's just focused the mind much more clearly.
Yeah. I think it's important, isn't it, that we keep that flow going, because you create a domino effect. You know, if we stop investing, you don't get any new customers, you stop investing, and on it goes. And it's important that we keep that flow. And you know, we kind of addressed very early on that if we didn't pay our smaller suppliers more quickly, they might not be there for us when we needed them coming out of the pandemic as well.
Well, this next comment won't mean anything to our audience, but they can speak to us afterwards if they want. We're both aware of the flywheel effect, and that momentum that gets created. If you can keep that moving, that's great. It's Absolutely. A positive effect on business. Alan, it's been a pleasure having you today. I hope our audience picks up something from our ramblings. This conversation has meant something and adds a bit of value. And if anybody listening wants to call us up, call you up, take that conversation a bit further, they're free to do so.
Definitely, be happy to.